Quran commands Muslims to beat rebellious wives into submission if they don't get in line after you warn them or punish them in other ways. As for those from whom ye fear rebellion, admonish them and banish them to beds apart and scourge them. Then, if they obey you, seek not a way against them. Lo, Allah is ever high, exalted, great. So if your wife gets out of line, some people say this is all one lump thing. You can just pick whichever punishment you think fits the crime. Others have a little ordering to it. So it's first you warn them, then you banish them to beds apart, and finally, if they don't listen before that, then you scourge them. You beat them until they listen to you. Now, Sam, Westernized Muslims, a lot of Westernized Muslims, they don't like this verse. So what do? They try and Yusuf Ali's translation, he even inserts the word lightly in parentheses
improving
there, which
the
is
Quran, right?
Yeah, he has to improve the Quran because you don't want people thinking they can just go beat their wives senseless.
But when you have a text like the Quran that is always read through the Sunnah of the Prophet, you have to look at what the Sunnah of the Prophet is telling you to understand the intended meaning of the text. And in that case, the intended meaning of God's words is not necessarily the one that's closest to the evident meaning. It is the one that is best supported by the evidence of the other verses of the Quran, of the Sunnah of the Prophet, of our understanding of the overall teachings of Islam. This is what tells us the intended meaning of the Quran. But what does the Prophet say about this? He said, أُولَٰئِكَ لَيْسَ أُولَٰئِكَ خِيَارُكُمْ. Those people who strike their wives are not the best of you. In another version of the hadith in the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim and Naysaburi, he says, خِيَارُكُمْ لَن تَضْرِبُوا. The best of you will not strike your wives. And in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet says, alayhi salatu لا يجلد أحدكم امرأته جلد العبد ثم يجامعها آخر النهار أو آخر اليوم. Let none of you strike his wife like he'd strike a slave and then go and sleep with her at the end of the day. And in his final sermon, his final khutbah at Hajj, what is one of the things the Prophet says? He says, "Attaqullah fi nisaikum." Fear God as concerns your wives, because you have taken them as a trust from God. They're in your trust. And he says, only if they do commit what he says is a fahisha mubayyina, an egregious, inappropriate behavior, egregious fahisha. Then strike them, but what? Only strike them darb ghayr mubarrih, in a way that leaves no mark, that causes no harm. So that's the Sunnah of the Prophet that we have to, that through which we read this verse, and through which every Islamic school of thought would read this verse. Which is why in the various schools of law, and you now, I see a lot of you are students here. You know how complicated fiqh is. You know how many different opinions, like for example in the Hanafi madhab you can have, Zahir Riwaya, and you have the opinion of Imam Abi Hanifa, you have the opinion of Abu Yusuf, you have the opinion of Muhammad bin Hassan Shibani, you have the opinion of Zufar bin Hudayl, of all these opinions. So fiqh is very complicated. But across the different madhabs, there's the same theme over and over again. You can only strike your wife lightly, in a way that causes no harm. If you cause her harm, you're liable for the diya. You're liable for compensating her for injuries. And according to every school except the Hanafi school, a judge, if a wife goes to a judge and says, my husband's beating me, and there's witnesses or evidence that the husband's beating her, or the husband confesses, the judge can do what's called tafriq. He can end the marriage legally, and the wife will get to keep her mahar, and the husband has to pay her nafaqah until her iddah ends, and the marriage is over.
This is the Islam you don't hear about on PBS or the BBC.
On the issue of women, Sammy says, well, the beating isn't supposed to cause a woman pain. It's not supposed to leave any bruises, not supposed to hurt them. And here, I'm not sure what Sammy, you do have Muslim commentators who say things like that.
So this verse uses the form, وَضْرِبْ. That form means to limit and not exceed the bounds of normality. That's why Ibn Abbas, he said, like to tap like this. It was controlling a social phenomenon.
But if we look to the Muslim sources, we see something very different. Sahih Muslim, number 2127, Aisha sneaks out of the house to see what Muhammad's doing. Muhammad comes home, finds her out of breath, asks her what she's done, and then what happened? He struck me on the chest, which caused me pain. Wait a minute, this is Aisha saying what Muhammad did. He struck me on the chest, which caused me pain. I thought Sammy said it's not supposed to cause pain. So was Muhammad violating his own commands in Surah 434?
As mentioned by Sayyidah Aisha, radiyallahu anha, who said that the Prophet that the Prophet never hit a woman, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
And as for the point about the Prophet Muhammad, he struck Aisha. I know that hadith he's talking about, but that's actually a wrong translation. If you read the Arabic, it doesn't say he struck her. It's actually he rubbed her chest. And he did that to another man in a similar incident. He wasn't striking her or hitting her. And that's the Arabic as well. Yes, there was some pain, but that wasn't the intention to cause pain. And again, the Prophet did it to another man, the same exact act. It's not an act of hitting someone or violence. And again, the Arabic doesn't say struck.
Oh, I can't wait to get to the Bible. We're going to have to wait a little bit, though. Okay?
Exodus 21:20-21 gives instruction on how to beat your slaves. If a man beats his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished, but he is not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or two, since the slave is his property. You can thrash them within inches of their lives, but make sure you don't directly kill them.
Remember, wife bashing is haram. Here in these verses, the issue of the beating is mentioned in these verses, but the understanding is not my understanding, nor is it yours. The understanding of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. That does not mean, right, the Quran has told me I'm allowed to bash a woman, bring my baseball bat, let me bat her. No, that is absolutely haram. Do you know that a marriage can be nullified by the group of ulama if a husband has bashed his wife? If that was permissible, why then would it be allowed to nullify the marriage? Just through him having beaten her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us understanding. So those people who are going around saying the Quran allows a man to beat a woman, they don't know what they're talking about. The Quran says that when as a last resort a woman is not listening and she does not want to look at you when you are talking to her, you may draw her attention by tapping her. That is the term. Darb does not necessarily mean to go out and beat and thump and thud. If that was the case, we would have read so many ahadith of the Sahaba having done that, radiallahu anhum. They didn't do that. But when we read the ahadith, they used a siwak. Do you know what is a siwak? A small stick which is used to clean the teeth, compared to the baseball bats that we are using today. A small stick that is used to clean the teeth, that was only used to draw the attention of the women. That was how they understood وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. That is how they understood it. So why should we then try and say, no, the Quran doesn't have that verse, when we go and speak to those modernists and those people who want to now delete verses of the Quran? Don't deny it. Say, look, the understanding is the understanding of the Sahaba, and also over and above that, a woman who's been bashed, you have the right to apply to the ulama, to the bodies, to the ulama authorities in the Muslim countries, to the courts, and that marriage will be nullified on those grounds. If it was permissible, how could it have been nullified?